The sound that wakes me is a cabinet door closing in the kitchen, soft but deliberate, the kind of sound a person makes when they do not want to be heard. For a few seconds, I lie there on my back and listen. The furnace hums through the vents. An old pipe ticks somewhere in the wall. The house breathes its usual morning breath. Yet underneath it all, there is a stillness that does not fit. I reach for the other side of the bed and grab nothing but cool cotton. Her side is empty, the covers already smoothed out, as if she was never there. A sliver of streetlight slips past the blinds and cuts the room in two, my half in shadow, her half bare. Somewhere down the hallway, a drawer slides shut quick, then stops. The refrigerator door opens and closes. A phone buzzes once against the counter, then falls silent. I can see it in my head, even from here. Emily standing in the dim kitchen light, checking the time, reading a message she does not want me to see. I sit up slowly, feel the weight of the ring on my finger, and realize I am bracing myself before my feet even touch the floor. There was a time when mornings in this house were messy and loud and honest. Now every movement feels measured, like we are two strangers trying not to wake each other in a borrowed room. I have fixed engines that rattled less than this marriage does now, and all it took to loosen the first bolt was one visit to the place she said she ran, only to find my wife carrying plates instead of making decisions. The sound that wakes me is a cabinet door closing in the kitchen. Soft, but deliberate. The kind of sound a person makes when they do not want to be heard. For a few seconds, I lie there on my back and listen. The furnace hums through the vents. An old pipe ticks somewhere in the wall. The house breathes its usual morning breath. Yet underneath it all, there is a stillness that does not fit. I reach across the bed, and my hand finds only cool sheet. Emily has been up a while. Her pillow still holds the shallow dip where her head rested, a faint hollow in the cotton. I sit up, planting my feet on the floor, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light sneaking in around the blinds. On the wall across from me hangs our favorite photograph. We are standing by the river downtown, her shoulder pressed into my chest, my hand at her back. Both of us smiling, like the future was a straight road with no cracks. For a moment, I hold that picture in my gaze long enough to feel the distance between then and now. Then I push myself up and follow the faint smell of coffee down the hall. Emily is at the kitchen counter when I walk in, close to a small mirror she has propped against the tile. She is not fully made up, just enough a thin sweep of eyeliner, a touch of color on her lips. More effort than a simple morning shift, not as much as a night out. Her travel mug sits beside her on the counter, steam already thinning in the air. "Morning," I say, and my voice sounds rougher than I expect. She answers without really turning. "Morning. I have to get in early today. They are doing an inventory check and some training for the new girl." The lines come out smooth, practiced, almost like she is reciting a schedule she wrote the night before. I move to the coffee maker and pour what is left into my old ceramic mug. The coffee is barely warm. She made hers first, and the rest has been waiting. It is a small detail, but small details are where change shows up first. I wrap my hands around the mug and let the lukewarm heat settle into my fingers. My eyes drift around the kitchen while she finishes with her makeup. There is a glass bowl on the table. I do not recognize a shade of green she never liked before. A stack of envelopes leans against it, bills, and notices half opened where she once kept everything sorted and filed. Under the chair are new shoes, dark leather, neat stitching, the kind of thing you notice, because you do not remember buying them. You have been picking up new things, I say, nodding toward the shoes, the bowl. She lets out a quick laugh that does not quite land. Little treats, nothing serious. We deserve a few nice things, right? She is not wrong, but it is the way she avoids my eyes when she says it that stays with me. Her phone face down near the sink buzzes once against the counter. She reaches for it without looking, slides it into her bag in one easy motion, and keeps talking about the new hire at the cafe. I do not see the screen. I do not ask. There was a time when either of us could have left a phone in plain sight all day and never thought twice. That time feels farther away than our photo on the wall. I sit at the table and drink my coffee. From here I can see into the living room, the couch, the small shelf with our pictures, the front door with its scuffed bottom edge where I once kicked off my boots too hard. This house in Westwood is not big or fancy, but it is ours. It has held our arguments and our laughter and our quiet nights. This morning, it feels like it is holding its breath. Emily checks her watch again. They want us there early for the training, she says, tugging her jacket off the chair. Ray wants everything ready before they open. She says the name of her boss, like it should mean something to me. Maybe it does. Maybe I never paid enough attention. Maybe now I am paying too much. I watch her slide her arms into the jacket. There is a faint scent that rises with the motion. Not her usual perfume, something lighter, sharper, like a sample from a store downtown. Not strong enough to upset, strong enough to notice. Need the car all day? She asks, adjusting the collar. I can take the long way in. Traffic might be rough. I tell her I will be fine. The shop is mine, only a short drive. I do not say that I know exactly how long it takes to get from our driveway to that corner in Over the Rhine at this hour. Years under hoods and under lifts have made me good at timing things without thinking how long a job should take, how long a drive should be. When she leaves, I stand at the front window and watch her walk to the car. Her steps are brisk, focused. She does not look back at the house. The engine starts. The car reverses, the taillights glow red. Then she is gone around the bend. The silence that settles after feels heavier than the one that woke me. At Whitaker Auto and Diesel, the day grabs me by the shirt the moment I unlock the door. The smell of oil and rubber, the clang of a dropped wrench, the old radio in the corner murmuring over the sound of air tools. These are things I understand. A truck comes in with a rattle at low speed. I listen, jack it up, follow the noise. In my world, if something feels off, there is always a reason, a part worn, a bolt loose, a seal broken. Machines may be complicated, but they are never dishonest. On my first break, I sit on the concrete step just outside the bay door, a fresh cup of coffee in my hands. The street hums with the usual passing cars. Across the way, a kid pedals by on a bike, too small for him, backpack swinging. I watch him, without really seeing him. My mind drifts back home, back to the faint scent on Emily's jacket, the unread bills, the buzz of her phone. There is an old memory that surfaces, one I do not call up often. My father coming home late one night when I was 15, smelling like a bar, swearing he had just stayed late at the plant. The next week we found out he had already lost that job. He kept the truth from us until the bank notices forced his hand. I remember the feeling when I heard the way the floor seemed to tilt under me. From that day on, I decided I would rather live with a hard truth than a soft lie. Maybe that is why these small things bother me more than I want to admit. By the time I close up the shop that evening, the sky has turned the color of old steel. I drive home with my hands light on the wheel, but my jaw set a little tighter than usual. The house glows from the front window when I pull into the drive. Inside her jacket is on the back of the dining chair, her shoes lined up neatly, the television off. Emily sits at the table with her laptop open. The screen glows blue against her face, giving her skin a pale, distant look. As I drop my keys in the dish by the door, I see her hand move just a fraction too quickly. She closes something on the laptop before she looks up. "How was your day?" I ask. "Busy," she says long. "We went over a lot of procedures, new checklists, new expectations." Her words are vague, smooth, like pebbles in a stream. They make sound, but they do not hold shape. Later, after a quiet dinner and a show we do not follow, we sit in the living room. The television flickers, filling the silence with other people's lives. I glance at her from time to time, trying to read something in the lines at the corners of her mouth, the way her shoulders sit the distance in her eyes. She used to talk through shows, pointing out things, laughing at small details. Tonight, she seems somewhere else entirely. Without looking away from the screen, she says that if things go well over the next few months, there is a chance she will move into a regional role. More responsibility. More oversight. The word regional sticks to my skin. Riverlight is a single cafe on a single street. I know this. I have seen the front, the handful of tables, the narrow bar. Maybe there is a plan I have not heard about. Maybe not. The questions gather behind my teeth and stay there. I feel my throat tighten for a second, like it has to choose between speaking and swallowing. I take a breath and let it go. I tell myself this is not the moment. I watch the light from the television slide across her face, her profile smooth and unreadable. We finish the evening like that, two people sharing a couch and very little else. When she goes to bed, I stay behind. I turn off the television and sit in the quiet. The clock on the wall ticks. A car passes outside, and its headlights trace a slow arc across the ceiling. The house feels larger than it did this morning, not in square feet, but in distance between two people. On the coffee table, my wedding ring catches the lamplight. I slip it off and set it down in front of me. The skin beneath it is paler than the rest of my hand, a thin white circle that testifies to years of wearing it without question. I rub that mark with my thumb, feeling the faint ridge where the metal has pressed all this time. I pick the ring up again and hold it between finger and thumb. It is a simple band, nothing fancy, but it carries every promise we ever spoke and a few we never did. For a moment, I imagine the day I slid it onto her finger at the courthouse, the way her hand shook just a little, and how sure I felt in that instant. The memory stings in a quiet, clean way. I place the ring back on my finger where it has lived for so long. The weight is familiar, yet different now that I have taken a moment to feel it. No vows come out of my mouth. No dramatic thought announces itself in my head. Just one plain decision settles in, steady as an engine that has finally found its idol. One day soon I will go to that cafe. I will walk and order a coffee and watch with my own eyes who my wife is when she is not in our house. Whatever I find, I will live with. I have lived with harder truths before. I stand, cross the room, and turn off the lamp. In the doorway to the hall, I pause and look back. The living room sits in the dim light from the street, the outline of the couch, the photo on the wall, the table with the faint glimmer of my ring. This house has held our best and our worst. Now it is holding something else, something unsaid. I let out a slow breath I did not know I was keeping. Then I step into the dark hallway, the quiet of the house closing around me, gentle and uneasy all at once. Morning comes in through the blinds as a thin gray light. I wake to the soft churn of the washing machine starting its cycle, a hollow swish that carries down the hallway. For a while, I stay in bed and listen to the house. The furnace kicks on once and settles. A car passes outside tires hissing on the street. The same sounds as any other day, but they sit differently in my chest. When I reach the laundry room, the air is damp and warm. The basket is half full on top of the dryer, a mix of my work shirts and her lighter colors. I pull her coat from the pile one sleeve inside out and give it a small shake before turning it right side again. As I do, something slips from the pocket and floats down like a tired leaf. It lands face down near my boot with a quiet touch of paper on tile. I bend and pick it up. The receipt is crumpled, the ink a little faded at the edges from time in her pocket. 2 lattes, 2 sandwiches, 1 slice of cheesecake. The date is from 3 days ago. My eye moves to the top line where the name of the shop is printed. It is not Riverlight Cafe. It is a different place in a part of town she has never had reason to mention. The words do not accuse on their own. People meet friends for coffee. People take breaks between errands. It is a small piece of paper, but it feels heavier than it should in my hand. I smooth it against my palm and stand there with the washing machine humming behind me, feeling the first clean edge of unease cut through the fog of doubt. I carry the receipt into the kitchen and set it on the counter. It lies there, ordinary and silent. For a moment, I picture Emily at a small table, somewhere else, not at the cafe she claims to run, laughing over coffee with someone I do not know. The picture is vague, but it settles into my imagination with more ease than I like. I open the drawer where we keep pens and rubber bands and menus from places we rarely order from. I slip the receipt inside and close the drawer carefully. Not to hide it, just to give myself a place to remember that I saw it. The day at the shop is busy enough to keep my hands occupied, but not my mind. Between jobs, between oil changes and brake pads, the image of that receipt comes back. It sits in my head the way an odd noise sits in the back of a used truck. Not loud enough to stop everything, but impossible to ignore once you have heard it. By evening, when Emily comes through the front door, the sky has turned a deep blue, and the air outside has that sharp edge it gets before winter really settles in. She shrugs off her coat, drops her keys into the dish by mine, and gives me a quick smile. There is a tiredness around her eyes, or maybe I am just looking harder than before. "How was your day?" I ask. "Long," she answers, moving toward the sink to wash her hands. "They had me stay late to close out the register with upper management. New policies. End-of-month routines." Her hands are under the water as she speaks. She turns the faucet off, a little too fast water splashing up the side of the basin. For a tiny moment, her fingers grip the edge of the sink, knuckles pale, before she reaches for the towel. She dries her hands with more force than needed, then folds the towel slowly, as if to smooth the motion she just made. Upper management. I say my voice as even as I can manage. She nods and reaches for her glass on the counter. She takes a sip and looks away toward the window, as if she has just remembered something there. The line of her jaw tightens, then relaxes again. It is all small, all easy to miss, but I do not miss it. After she moves into the living room, I stay in the kitchen under the yellow light. The house is quiet, except for the low murmur of the television she turns on. I take my phone out of my pocket and set it on the table. My thumb hesitates over the screen for half a second, then I open the browser and type the name of the cafe that pays her. The page loads with a photo of the front door, I know the chalkboard sign, the little string lights. The latest post sits at the top, dated that afternoon. Due to an electrical issue, the cafe closed early today. Sorry for the inconvenience. I read the line twice. The phone screen reflects in the shine of the table, making the words seem doubled. In the living room, canned laughter from the television pours into the quiet. I lock the phone and lay it face down. My palm lingers on the back of it. There is a feeling that rises in me, not quite anger, not quite fear, just a slow-moving weight that settles somewhere behind my ribs. I have heard lies this size before. I saw what they turned into when my father told us he still had a job long after he lost it. Small lies are rarely small for long. Later, when the dishes are done and the television show has ended, I tell Emily I need to look over some bills in the dining room. She nods and reaches for her phone, her thumb moving across the screen while she pretends to watch another program. I take my laptop to the table and open our bank account. The light from the screen throws a cool glow over my hands. It makes the lines on my knuckles look deeper. The numbers fill the page. Most of it is what I expect. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, hardware store, a few takeout charges. Then I see the pattern I did not want to see. Cash withdrawals, modest but steady. Always the same general note. ATM, always on evenings when she said she had an extra shift staying late to help. Each one is a small sum, not enough to ring alarms at the bank. Enough to raise alarms in a marriage. The cursor pulses beside the last entry, as if it is waiting for me to do something. My throat feels dry, so I swallow and close the laptop. The room seems darker when the screen goes black, even though the overhead light has not changed. For a moment, I let my hand rest on the closed lid, feeling the faint warmth radiating through the plastic. The next afternoon, I drive across town to see Travis. His place sits above a narrow storefront near Over the Rhine. I climb the stairs, each step creaking under my boots. When I reach his office, he is at his desk sorting papers into neat stacks. He looks up, takes one long look at my face, and pushes the papers aside. "You all right?" he says. I ease into the chair across from him. My shoulders feel heavier than they should. I tell him about the shop, the hours, the work that never seems to end. Then I let his name for the cafe slip into the conversation. Riverlight. I ask if he ever passes that corner, if it is busy, if he has ever stopped in. My voice tries to sound casual, but there is a tightness I cannot quite hide. Travis studies me for a long second, then sits back. He does not ask why I want to know. Men like him rarely demand explanations when they see a friend already carrying something. I go past there sometimes, he says I can keep an eye out, see what is what. I nod. The air between us does not need more words. When I leave, the sky is already darkening. Streetlights blink on one by one, casting pale circles on the sidewalk. I walk back to the truck with my hands in my pockets. The cold reaches into my sleeves and sits on my skin. That night when we go to bed, the room feels smaller. Emily lies beside me, her back turned slightly, her breathing steady and slow. The mattress dips under our combined weight, but there is a space between our bodies that feels wider than it used to. I stare into the dark, tracing familiar shapes silently, the dresser, the window, the outline of the door. My hand rests on my chest for a moment, then I let it drift across the sheets until it reaches the empty space between us. I stop there, inches from the warmth of her shoulder, then pull my hand back to my side. The choice is small, but it carries its own kind of truth. The only sounds in the room are her breaths and the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. I listen to both, counting neither. The glow from the street lamp outside sneaks in at the edge of the curtain and falls across the dresser, a thin strip of light that lands near the drawer where I put the receipt. I lie there with my eyes open, watching that strip of light until it blurs. Somewhere deep inside, beneath habit and hope, and all the excuses a man can make for someone he loves, something firm settles into place. Whatever this is, it is not in my head anymore. It is real, it is growing, and it will not go away just because I close my eyes. The morning after the receipt, the house feels different. Not louder, not colder, just different in a way I cannot name. The kind of shift a man senses before he can explain it, like air pressure before a storm. I stand in the kitchen doorway for a long moment, watching the thin line of light slide across the counter the same way it did yesterday. It feels like something trying to draw a quiet border between what I used to know and what I am about to learn. I make coffee slowly, letting the steam rise in front of me, while the scent spreads through the room. My wedding ring turns once on my finger, a habit I did not notice until now. Work becomes a blur that week. Wrenches clink, engines rumble, and customers come in and out, but none of it sticks long in my mind. On the third afternoon, the shop is filled with the sound of an old truck idling when my phone vibrates sharply on the metal workbench. The sound cuts through everything. I wipe my hands with a stained rag and pick it up. It is a message from Travis. He has sent 2 photos, no words. The first image loads slowly, and when it appears, I feel something inside me tighten, but stay still, like a rope pulled without snapping. Emily stands under the warm lights of river light, an apron around her waist, a tray in her hand. Her posture straight, but tired, her smile the polite one she uses for strangers, not the real one she once saved for me. There is a name tag pinned to her chest, and she is leaning toward a table of customers, her expression soft, attentive. Nothing about her stance says management. It says service, hard work, the kind of work you cannot hide. The second photo shows her wiping down a table head, bowed slightly cloth, moving in circles. She listens to someone off to the side, hair tucked behind her ear. Her shoulders sag just a touch the way they do when she has been on her feet for hours. Again, nothing like what she has told me. No sign of authority. No sign of a manager. Just effort. Just secrecy. Just a truth she did not think anyone would see. I do not sit down. I stand next to the workbench with the rag still in my hand, and the smell of cold oil sinking into my clothes. The photos do not shout. They do not demand. They simply show something I cannot ignore, and that kind of truth hits harder than any accusation. For the rest of the day, my hands move on their own tightening bolts, checking fluids, answering questions. But my mind stays fixed on the images. They press into me like a weight that will not shift. She has been carrying this lie for months, carrying trays at a job she pretended to oversee, saying she was in meetings when she was probably wiping tables. It is not the job that hurts me. It is the lie wrapped around it. When I get home that evening, the kitchen lights glow softly. Emily stands at the counter chopping vegetables, movements quick and automatic. Her back is straight, but tense, as if she is holding herself together with careful posture. I watch her quietly for a moment. The sound of the knife striking the cutting board is steady, almost rhythmic. She seems peaceful at first glance, but the longer I watch, the more I notice small cracks. The way her shoulders rise slightly when her phone buzzes on the counter. the way she snatches it up too quickly and smooths her hair afterward like the motion needs justification. We eat dinner together, the usual small talk, filling the space where truth should live. I nod at the right times, ask simple questions. She gives simple answers. None of them feel real. I can sense her waiting for me to stop looking at her so closely. She folds laundry afterward, sitting on the couch with her legs tucked under her. She folds the same shirt twice, not noticing. The soft lamplight makes her look fragile, or maybe I am just seeing her differently now. That night I start paying attention in ways I never had to before. I listen to the pattern of her footsteps in the hallway. I notice the time she leaves in the morning and how long the shower runs before she goes. I check traffic on my phone a few times, curious about how long it actually takes to drive from Riverlight to the other cafe printed on that receipt. The numbers do not match her stories. 2 nights later, I walk slowly down the hallway toward our bedroom and hear her voice behind the half-open door. It is quiet, softer than usual, with a strain under the surface. She says something about putting in more this month, something about just a little longer. Then the floorboard under my foot creaks. Her words stop instantly like someone cut a wire. I push the door open gently. She sits on the edge of the bed, her phone lowered in her hands, her breathing steady but too controlled. She gives me a quick smile, small, and rehearsed, the kind a person uses when they need to hide the truth under politeness. "Everything all right?" I ask. She nods. "Work," she says. "A long day. A small issue with a customer. Nothing important." Her voice tries to be light, but it wavers just slightly at the end. She turns back to the basket of laundry and begins folding a towel that was already folded neatly. Her fingers move too carefully, smoothing the same corner again and again. I step into the bathroom and wash my hands. The sound of water fills the small space, a steady rush that barely masks the shifting sounds behind me. When I turn the faucet off, the silence feels thick. I can feel her presence through the door even without seeing her. The weight of what she is not saying fills the house more than any words could. In bed that night, her breathing is steady, calm, familiar. But it does not bring comfort. It brings distance. I lie on my back, staring up at the faint ceiling, thinking of the photos. The apron. The tray. The quiet exhaustion on her face. I think of her voice on the phone, low and strained, promising something to someone she will not name. My hand rests on my chest for a moment, then falls to my side. I turn my ring once slowly. The truth is no longer hiding. It is shaping itself into something solid, something I cannot avoid. Whatever is happening, whatever she is tangled in it, is no longer something I can observe from afar. A man can only watch for so long before he has to face what the watching has revealed. I sit up in the dark and swing my legs over the side of the bed. Outside the window, a street lamp sends a pale glow across the floor. It stops near my feet, a thin line of light marking the edge of the room. My keys are on the dresser. I reach toward them without thinking, then let my hand fall back to my lap. Tomorrow, or the next day, or the moment. I feel the weight settle. Just right. I will walk into that cafe. I will see her there, not as my wife telling stories, but as the woman she truly is in that place. The thought lands quietly inside me, firm and final. The watching is over. The seeing begins now. The morning light falls across the bedroom floor in a thin, steady line when I open my eyes. I lie still for a moment, letting the quiet settle into my chest. My keys rest on the dresser where I left them last night. When I reach for them, the metal feels cool against my palm, heavier than it should. I slip them into my pocket and walk through the house, each step slow, as if the walls themselves are watching me leave. At the shop, I work without thinking. Engines roar, tools clatter, customers talk about weekend plans, but none of it reaches me. By early afternoon, I stand in the center of the garage, staring at the open bay door. Sunlight pours in warm and bright, and it feels almost wrong against the weight I carry inside. I shut down early, lock the door. The sound echoes off the metal, sharp and final. The drive to over the Rhine is familiar. Old buildings with sun-faded brick, narrow streets, lined with parked cars, murals painted high on the walls. I roll the window down halfway and let the air move through the truck. The breeze cools my face, but it does nothing for the tightening in my chest. When I turn onto the block where Riverlight Cafe sits, the place looks almost gentle. Warm lights glow through large windows. A couple sits outside sharing a pastry. Someone taps on a laptop near the corner. It is peaceful, the kind of spot people choose for quiet afternoons. Nothing about it matches the lies that carried me here. I stand on the sidewalk long enough to feel my heartbeat steady itself. Then I pull open the door. Inside, soft music blends with the low murmur of conversation. A barista behind the counter greets me with a nod and keeps working the espresso machine. The smell of roasted beans rises through the room. I let my eyes move from table to table, scanning for something I hope I will not find. But there she is. Emily stands with a tray in her hand, her hair pulled back loosely, the apron tied around her waist. She leans toward a young couple, jotting down an order on a small pad, her posture tired yet practiced. When she turns the name tag on her chest, catches the light. She does not look like someone filling in for a day. She looks like someone who belongs to this routine. My chest tightens, but I stay where I am. Her movements flow with the rhythm of the cafe, clearing a table, refilling a glass, carrying a plate balanced on one hand. There is no authority in her stance, no sign of someone who supervises staff, no hint of the position she described so confidently at home. Behind the counter, a woman in a neat blouse calls out orders with a voice that carries above the room. She directs two baristas, checks the register, then turns to Emily with a firm tone. Emily, table 3, needs a refill. Emily nods quickly and reaches for a pitcher. The motion is automatic, obedient. She does not argue, does not instruct, does not show even a trace of authority. Madison Rowe is clearly the manager here, and the contrast between them is unmistakable. I feel something inside me settle into place, not with anger, but with a quiet certainty that is somehow worse. I walk to the counter and rest my hand on its cool surface. The barista glances up and asks if I want anything. His voice is calm, a little tired, the way people sound near the end of a shift. I ask for a black coffee. He nods and turns away, the grinder whirring to life. I choose a seat in the corner where the shadows stretch across the floor. When the coffee arrives, I wrap my hands around the warm cup and let my eyes find her again. She wipes down a counter, then reaches into her apron pocket for a pen. She tucks a stray hair behind her ear and gives a polite smile to a customer. There is a softness in her face I have not seen in a long time, but it is mixed with something else. A strain, a weight, something she has been carrying alone. I watch her for several minutes before she finally turns in my direction. Her gaze passes over the tables, then stops mid-air. Her whole body freezes, The change in her face happens too fast to hide. Shock first, a quick, sharp panic. Then something like shame that flickers in her eyes before she pulls in a breath and tries to steady herself. Her fingers tighten around the tray. She looks toward the back, searching for a place to stand that is not in front of me. She murmurs something to Madison and disappears through the kitchen door. I let out a slow breath I did not know I was holding. Then I take one more sip of the bitter coffee, stand up, and leave the cup on the table. Outside, the air behind the cafe is cooler, shaded by tall brick walls. The ground is brushed with leaves and gravel. Emily stands near her car, with her arms crossed tight against her body. Her apron is still tied around her waist, the edges wrinkled where she clutched it too hard. When she hears my footsteps, she looks up. Her eyes are red around the edges. She presses her lips together as if holding words back or holding herself together. I stop a few feet from her. The space between us is small, but the distance feels wide. My hand grazes the ring on my finger. I slide it once, then let it rest. She watches me, her breath shallow. Waiting. I look at her apron, at the faint outline of flour on the fabric, at the tiredness in her shoulders. She never showed me at home. The truth stands between us, unavoidable. My voice stays low and steady when I speak. So who are you here, Emily? The words hang in the quiet air, settling with a weight that neither of us can step around. The morning after that quiet confrontation hung in the air like a bruise. Emily stood in the kitchen, with her hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. She admitted the lie without looking at me, her voice small, saying she only wanted to feel proud of something again. The words drifted in the space between us, and I realized the truth was no longer the sharpest part of the wound. It was the ease with which she had carried it. I packed a small bag and left the house that afternoon. At the shop, I unfolded an old cot in my office, the metal legs scraping against the concrete floor. The smell of oil and rubber clung to me while I lay there listening to freight trucks on the highway. Every sound felt heavier in the dark, as if the world had slowed just enough to force me to feel what I had been avoiding. The next day, I returned to the house to gather more clothes. The rooms looked the same, but the air was different. I walked into our bedroom and noticed the small metal box she always kept locked was missing. In its place were scattered papers, some slid halfway out of a folder, as if she had rushed through them. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the folder, feeling the weight of each page before I read a single word. There, among bank statements and handwritten reminders, was a personal loan agreement with Victor Lane. Not a bank, not a credit union, just his handwritten name at the bottom, and an interest rate that made my stomach tighten. It was the kind of loan people took when they ran out of options and pride. Beside it was a medical bill from 2 years ago, an outpatient clinic visit I had never heard about. The date was circled twice in heavy ink. I held the paper between my fingers and tried to breathe. The lies were no longer about her title at a cafe. They were about fear debt, and the kind of loneliness that could make a person hide pieces of themselves even inside a marriage. When she came home that evening, she stopped at the doorway, as if she had forgotten how to walk inside her own house. She whispered a quiet apology, not for the loan, not for the title, but for not telling me she was scared. I watched her face and felt a wave of exhaustion rise up. Not anger, not betrayal, just the hollow space where trust used to sit. I stayed silent because anything I said in that moment would have cracked open more than either of us was ready to face. Back at the shop, I sat at my desk long after midnight. The loan documents were spread out under the yellow lamp, the edges curling slightly as if they too felt the strain. I reached into my jacket pocket and found my wedding ring sitting where I had placed it earlier. I held it between my fingers, turning it slowly, feeling its cool weight, trying to remember the last time it had felt like a promise instead of a memory. The next morning, I called attorney Daniel Kincaid and asked if he had time for a walk-in appointment. His office downtown was warm and quiet, lined with framed certificates that caught the light from the window. I carried the folder under my arm, the papers inside shifting slightly with each step, making a faint rustle that followed me down the hallway. Daniel greeted me with a firm nod and gestured toward a chair. I sat, placing the folder on the desk between us. For a moment, I just looked at it the way a man might look at the first shovel of dirt before a long job. He waited without speaking, giving me room to find my voice. I opened the folder and slid it toward him. The papers spread out and caught a beam of morning light. I watched him scan the loan document, his eyebrows drawing together slightly. Then he looked at the medical bill, his expression softening in a way that felt almost merciful. I heard myself speak calm and steady, asking what was legally tied to me, what wasn't, and what this meant for a man who still wanted to believe his marriage could be salvaged, but knew belief alone was no longer enough. Daniel leaned back, thinking. His pause felt heavier than his words would later be. In that brief silence, I understood that whatever he was about to tell me would redraw the lines of the life I had been living. The room stayed quiet as I waited. Outside the window, a gust of wind pushed dry leaves across the sidewalk. I watched them scatter and settle, drifting in small, uncertain circles, and I felt something inside me shift in the same slow motion. When Daniel finally spoke, his voice was steady. I listened, hands folded, feeling the ring still cold in my pocket. His words were clear, measured, and honest, and each one pulled me farther down a path I had not planned for, but could no longer avoid. I stayed still, letting the truth settle around me, and for the first time since everything began, I felt the faint ache of something closing, something ending, even if I did not yet know how to let it go. Daniel sat back slightly as he finished reading the loan papers, the edges of the documents catching a strip of morning light across his desk. His voice stayed level as he explained what belonged to a marriage under Ohio law and what remained on Emily alone. I kept my hands still in my lap, listening to every word settle like slow drops of water. Nothing he said shocked me, but hearing it spoken with certainty made the truth feel heavier, more defined. He told me to protect myself with calm habits, not anger. Separate accounts for now, he said, and keep records of conversations and receipts. Write things down while they are still fresh. I nodded, feeling the cool circle of my wedding ring in my pocket, turning it once with my thumb. His tone was steady, never dramatic, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the shape of control returning quiet and firm like a hand on my shoulder. When I stepped outside, the air carried the crisp scent of early afternoon. I walked without purpose along the sidewalk, listening to leaves scrape across pavement. My mind felt strangely clear. This wasn't about punishing Emily or proving anything to her. It was about pulling my own life back into view after months of walking through it half-blind. I stopped at a street corner and let the thought settle, the sun warming the side of my face, while the rest of me felt cold. Later, I drove to the cafe linked to the loan. The bell over the door chimed softly, and the warm smell of coffee curled around me. Victor Lane stood behind the counter cleaning an espresso wand, pausing just long enough to show he knew who I was. His eyes flickered with something cautious, before he gestured toward a corner table. We sat in a small patch of light where dust drifted in slow patterns above the wood. I spoke plainly, and he listened, his jaw tight at first, as if bracing for a confrontation. When he finally answered, his words were measured. He admitted he had lent Emily money for a small idea she believed in, something she hoped would help, not harm. It failed, he said, and she had been paying him back with extra shifts. He added quietly that he had warned her not to take the risk. There was no romance, no hidden relationship, only the kind of pressure that makes people reach further than they should. A moment of silence sat between us. The truth was not easier than the lie. It only drew the outline of a deeper loneliness, one she had never spoken aloud. Victor glanced away for a second, maybe feeling the weight of it too, before clearing his throat and standing to return to the counter. I left without shaking his hand. Both of us relieved the conversation had ended, without anger, but not without consequence. The drive home felt long, even though the roads were familiar. The sky was turning a dim gray, the kind that made the tops of houses blend into the clouds. I kept seeing Emily at the table the night she confessed, her fingers curled around a cold mug, her gaze fixed on a place just past my shoulder. She had lied because she didn't trust herself with the truth, but beneath that was something quieter, something that hurt more. She didn't believe she was worthy of being loved without first being impressive. The house was dim when I stepped inside. A single lamp glowed in the living room, muted and warm. Emily stood near the doorway to the kitchen, her hands clasped together, her shoulders drawn inward, as though the simple act of seeing me had taken effort. There was fear in her eyes, yes, but also a strange softness, as if she had prepared herself to hear words she would not be able to hold. I set my keys on the table, the sound small and final. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she took a step closer, stopped, and whispered that she was sorry again. Not for the loan this time, but for thinking she had to be more than herself to keep our life intact. Her voice cracked slightly at the end, a brief sound that made her turn her face away, as though embarrassed to let me hear it. I steadied my breath before speaking. I told her I knew the whole story now. The failed idea, the shifts, the fear that kept her silent. She closed her eyes as if each detail pried open something she had fought hard to keep shut. I let the quiet stretch a moment longer before continuing. From now on, I need the truth. If you can offer that even when it hurts, we can walk through what comes next. If you can't, then the lawyer will handle the rest. She lifted her eyes to mine, and for the first time in weeks I saw something raw beneath the fear, a mixture of regret and recognition, like she was finally seeing the damage she had tried so long to outrun. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something else, maybe ask for one more chance, but whatever words she found dissolved before they reached the air. I walked past her slowly and stopped at the edge of the living room. Behind me, I heard her take one uneven breath, the kind a person takes when they are trying to stay upright. The lamp's light cast a soft glow across the floor, highlighting a thin scratch on the hardwood I had never noticed before. It ran straight for a few inches, then curved slightly as if something had dragged, and then hesitated. I slipped my hand into my pocket and felt the cold circle of my ring again. I held it there without taking it out, letting its weight press gently into my palm. For a long moment, I stayed in that spot, suspended between who we had been and who we were becoming, listening to the quiet stretch across the house like a thin line waiting to break. When I finally moved, the room felt different, as if a shift had passed through the walls themselves. I didn't look back. The silence behind me carried enough weight to say everything she could not. The shop was quiet when I came in that morning, quiet in a way that settled over everything, like a thin layer of dust. I set my keys on the counter and stood still for a moment, letting the hum of the fluorescent lights fill the space. My calm had surprised even me these past few days. It was the kind of calm that came after you had already broken once and had nothing left to shatter. Emily arrived not long after. She stepped into the office doorway without knocking, her hands clasped together, her shoulders tight. There was a tremor in the way she said my name, as if she wasn't sure I would let her finish the sentence. I looked at her not with anger, not with pity, but with the steady space I needed between us. It was the first time she truly seemed afraid of losing something she had taken for granted. She tried to speak and stopped, started again, then opened her bag with fingers that fumbled. She pulled out a thin folder papers bending at the edges from being handled too much. She placed them on the table, not sliding them toward me, just setting them down as if she already knew I might not touch them. Her voice was small when she said the loan box wasn't in the house anymore, that she had given it to Victor to hold while she worked off the debt. She said it without excuses, just breath and guilt. I listened, arms folded loosely the way a man does when he is holding himself steady. For the first time, she didn't try to decorate the truth. She only said she wished she had trusted me sooner. I felt something in my chest shift, not soften, but sink. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, and it hurt more than the lies had. I told her I could have lived with a wife who earned less than she hoped. The words came slowly, one at a time, because I needed them to land exactly where they belonged. I said I couldn't live with a wife who built a story around her fears instead of coming to me with them. When I said it, she closed her eyes, not dramatically, just like someone who finally understood she had walked herself into a place she never meant to go. She reached for my arm lightly, as if testing whether she still had the right. I stepped back an inch, not in cruelty, only in truth. She withdrew her hand and stared at it for a moment, as if realizing it no longer fit where it used to. Later that evening, I sat with Travis near the river. The breeze carried the smell of water and old concrete, the kind of smell that reminded you life wasn't clean, but it kept moving anyway. He lifted his beer and tapped it lightly against mine, saying he was proud of how I had held myself through all this. His words came without weight, the way old friends speak when they have seen you at your worst and still sit beside you. I nodded, not sure if pride was the feeling inside me, or just a quiet kind of exhaustion. Before heading home, I stopped by the shop again. I turned on the small desk lamp and laid out the documents Daniel had prepared. The light was soft, tracing the edges of every page. My signature went down evenly, page after page, not rushed, not hesitant. It marked a boundary drawn not in anger, but in self-respect. I agreed to divide what we earned together. I refused the debts she had created alone. Daniel said it was fair. I felt it was necessary. When I finished, I sat back and looked at the empty chair across from me. For a moment I pictured Emily sitting there the way she had years ago, laughing at something small, her hand tapping the armrest. The image lasted only a second, soft as dust drifting in a beam of light. Then it faded, and the room returned to its quiet. I turned off the lamp and gathered the papers. As I locked the door, I felt a tightness low in my chest. Not pain, not relief, something between the two. The parking lot was nearly dark, the night air cool against my face. I paused beside my truck and let the silence settle. Somewhere behind me a phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it. Not yet. I stood there with the weight of everything unsaid pressing lightly against my ribs, knowing the line between us had finally been drawn, knowing she felt it too. And in that moment of stillness, I understood that something had ended, But something else was only beginning quiet as the night around me. The morning light was soft when I stepped out of Daniel's office. It rested on the edge of the buildings downtown, a pale gold that felt quieter than the night before. My hands were still a little stiff from signing the last set of papers. The door clicked shut behind me, and the sound settled into my chest like something final, yet strangely calm. Emily stayed in the conference room for a moment after everything was signed. When she finally came out, she stood a few feet away from me, her shoulders small inside her coat. There was a long breath before she spoke, as if she was lifting a weight herself. I never meant to lie that long, her voice low and tired. I was ashamed of what I became. I was afraid of the way you would look at me. I nodded, not out of agreement, but out of understanding. I let the quiet stretch between us. She waited for me to say something, anything, as if there was one line that could turn us back into what we used to be. There was no such line. I cannot rewrite the past. My voice came out steady, almost gentle. I can only choose what comes next for me. She looked down at her hands. A small tremble. Then she lifted her eyes again. Do you think we could have found our way back? Her question was almost a whisper, a last attempt to step across a distance neither of us could name fully. I breathed in slowly. The answer sat in my chest, solid, simple. I wanted to believe we could, I said. Now I think we walked in different directions for too long. There was no anger in her face, only a sadness that finally had space to exist. She nodded once, a short and careful motion, then stepped aside so I could pass. I walked out the glass doors into the cold air and let them close behind me. I drove without thinking about where I was heading. The city opened into familiar streets. When I passed Riverlight, the windows were fogged from the afternoon rush. I saw her inside apron tied at the back, moving between tables with a tray balanced on her palm. Nothing dramatic, nothing hidden. Just the woman she had been all along. For the first time, the sight did not hollow me out. It only felt like a truth, settling into its rightful place. I kept driving. The road curved toward the river, the water carrying a faint silver shimmer. I parked for a moment and sat there, with the engine off. My hands rested on the steering wheel. The silence inside the car felt like a new kind of air. When I reached home, the house was dim and still. I walked to the bedroom, opened the wooden drawer that once held her secrets. The ring felt cool against my fingers. I turned it once, watching the light skim its surface, then set it in the drawer. The wood closed gently with a soft thud. For a moment I stood there, listening to the quiet. My reflection in the window looked different, steadier somehow. The kind of steadiness that comes not from winning, but from surviving with intention. I walked through the house, each step lighter than the last. Outside, the late afternoon sky shifted from gray to a thin wash of soft blue. A breeze moved through the open crack of the window and brushed past the curtains. It carried a calmness that felt earned. I stepped onto the porch and let the door fall shut behind me. The sound was soft, final, and kind. The street was empty, the air clear, the day waiting without expectation. Somewhere in that stillness, I felt something loosen inside me. Not joy, not sorrow, just release. I took a slow breath and walked toward the fading light, letting the quiet lead the way forward.